Hey guys, welcome back to Hope, Heal, and Shine. I'm Michelle, and this week we are talking about healing through the power of using your voice. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Last month's healing video was focused on this chart, which talks about moving from a victim to a survivor to a thriver. And today we're going to be continuing that discussion with what I believe is the first important step of transitioning into a survivor. Reading through this list real quick, we can see some of the differences between a victim and a survivor, and some of the things that define a survivor include seeing yourself as wounded but healing, being able to name what happened, not afraid to tell your story to save people, learning how to protect yourself, learning healthy needs, you're out of hiding and able to hear others with compassion, you're feeling hopeful, at times you may be still struggling for reasons and chances to heal, but you are seeking help. You have glimpses of self-acceptance and fun without the need of others, and you have a movement of feeling. Again, all the resources I used for this chart are listed in the description below. Today, I'm mostly going to focus on only one of these aspects, which is being not afraid to tell your story to save people. I really believe in the power of using your voice to heal. I know for me, that has been such a crucial part of my healing, and one of the reasons that I set out to do these videos in the first place. Having kept this a secret, even from some of my closest friends and family members, for nearly a decade, I know how harmful it is to keep this kind of secret bottled up inside and how much it just eats away at you. So I am a big advocate in the power of using your voice to heal. Now, hold up, that does not mean I think everybody needs to make YouTube videos. I never thought I would be in this position, and I definitely don't think this is a necessary part of everyone's healing journey. But I do believe that sharing with a few safe people whom you are close to is a very important step that needs to be included in everyone's healing. Today I'm going to be discussing 4 important points of telling your story, including why, how, when, and with whom to share your story. So that is a lot of information to cover, so let's just jump right in. Why should you tell anybody about this? Honestly, because trauma only festers in darkness. You can't bury something and expect it to just go away. There are so many aspects of your life that this is going to affect, and refusing to ever talk about it is like refusing to clean out an open cut. It might scab over, but if there is still something beneath that skin, it is going to fester and become infected, affecting so many aspects of your life. I have sadly seen this happen to so many people who never told anybody, and this has literally shaped their entire life. I know that during the year I was being abused, I didn't tell a soul what was happening behind closed doors because I was terrified of how they would react and how that would change how they saw me. I already hated myself. I didn't need anybody else to hate me. So I kept quiet. And because I kept quiet, it continued. You need to speak out to get help on this. The day I learned that what had been happening to me for almost a year was manipulation, abuse, and rape, I went home that day and emailed my teacher. Writing that email was one of the most terrifying things I've ever done. But I chose to do it. I chose to reach out and tell somebody what was happening instead of just keeping silent about it like I had been doing for a year. That choice to reach out is what eventually triggered the end of the relationship and literally saved me. So please tell someone. Now, how do you go about telling somebody that you were abused? So in my experience, I have found that the more confident I am about my own story, the more confidence I instill in the people that I am telling my story to. The times when I wasn't very confident and said, well, I think this is what happened, well, they're unsure if it happened too, because I'm not sure. Why would they be sure? If they're not an expert on rape and abuse, they don't know anything better than what I tell them. So I think it's really important going into this that you have at least 2 things that you can logically know and say when you tell somebody else your story. Even if you can't completely feel them, you can say them, and you can do your best to say them with confidence. These 2 things are naming what happened to you and not taking blame. Saying it was abuse or assault or rape, literally using those terms. Don't say something kind of bad happened or I think my friend kind of did something not okay. No, those words are uncomfortable, but they need to be used. Call it what it is. Call it rape. Call it sexual assault. Call it sexual abuse, physical abuse, whatever it was that happened to you, name it. Name it and say that's what it was when you tell someone. I know that is not an easy phrase to get out. A few weeks after I had my absolutely horrible experience telling my friends, I was able to open up to my parents. And I'll tell you that getting the words, "I was raped," was literally the hardest sentence I have ever had to get out of my mouth. I felt like I physically couldn't say the words. I was so terrified to tell them, but I did. And I'm really grateful that I did. My parents didn't have to know the perfect everything to say. They were just there and just loved me and cried with me and just helped me feel like I wasn't carrying this burden alone anymore. So just as we talked about last month, with the importance of accepting that you have first been a victim, I think that is a very important place to start. And I know that not everyone can get there to start. I completely skipped that step for almost 10 years before I actually jumped back and was able to believe that it wasn't my fault. And there were a number of things that helped me actually be able to accept that. But I do know that since I've been able to accept that, telling people my story has been so much easier. And I have told hundreds of more people in the last 5 years than I did in the first 10 or so years after the abuse. Because now when I tell my story, there's no question in my mind that I don't have to be ashamed of this because it's not my shame to carry. What happened was not my fault. Have I made stupid choices in my life? Absolutely. Have I made stupid choices in regards to dating my abuser? 100%. But I can now separate the fact that I made a dumb choice from the abuse. The abuse is not mine to carry, so I don't. And now when I tell my story, knowing that it's not my fault, guess what? There's been a lot less victim blaming because people generally accept the story for how you tell it. Whereas in the past, when I used to tell my story and I would be unsure or I would feel like I needed to take some of the responsibility so they didn't feel like I was just playing a victim card, or I didn't want people to judge me because I wasn't taking responsibility for things I should. I received a lot more victim blaming questions and statements, and those in turn would make me doubt myself even more. So I can tell you that I understand that it's not always possible to feel completely confident in your story right at the start of your healing journey. But even if logically you can tell the story without taking blame, the people you tell are going to be more likely to not blame you in return. So then this brings up, when should you tell? Should you wait to tell anybody until you completely know this wasn't your fault? Nope, definitely not. I think telling people early on is really important. I don't think anyone should try to heal from something this huge by themselves. You need support. You need to take this dirty little secret out of its hiding place and bring it out into the light where it can shrivel up and die. Your trauma will only fester in darkness. Shining light on it is what will help you heal. So bring it out, share it with those who are going to love, believe, and support you, and do it as soon as you can. Again, even if you can't feel like this isn't your fault yet, work towards it. But in the meantime, you don't owe anybody any details that you don't want to tell. Your story can be as simple as, I was raped, or I was abused. And if that's all you're comfortable sharing, then that's all they get to hear at the moment. It's your story. You have the power to say what you want to say. And if they ask questions, you can say, I'm just not ready to share anymore right now, but I'll let you know when I am. I do think sharing some details with the right people is very important, but know your audience. When I share publicly, I give very, very little details because most of those details really aren't relevant to what I'm trying to do on this channel. I definitely am not out to try to slander my abuser, so I never include identifying names, details, or timelines, because it's just not important. And it's my story. Leaving some things out does not make it any less true. I get to choose what I share and what I don't share. And there is a lot that I will never share online. Basically, the full story in detail, I have only said to a very select number of people. And then it ranges from there with different friends and different settings and environments when it's appropriate to share certain things and when it's not. So just know that you don't have to share everything with everyone every time. They are not entitled to the details, and people are never entitled to your story. I used to think everyone I dated, I needed to tell my story to, but no. And that actually resulted in a lot more victim blaming and some of the worst things that were ever said to me. Just because someone is in your life does not make them entitled to know every detail of what happened. That is up to you. And I would say to generally only tell details to very close family members, very close friends, and therapist. And that's it. Nobody else needs to know. Just keep it tight. So that brings me to the last question, which is with whom to share. I am extremely grateful that the first person I told was somebody who could help me identify the story and the truths of what happened to me for what they were, because I was not equipped to do that. I did not have a name for what was happening to me and could never have been able to tell anybody I was raped had this person not helped me see that that's what it was. I would say, looking back, if I could advise my younger self on who to tell and what to talk about, I would have a lot of things to say, including it's probably best to not confide in people who are equally close to your abuser as they are to you, or really anybody who is very likely to choose sides with your abuser over you. So that is some advice I would give on who to tell or not tell, is just maybe avoiding people who are really close to your abuser, because they're not going to be inclined to want to believe it. And that's probably not the best place to start when you're still trying to figure things out yourself. This can get really tricky if it's a family member. So if you're nervous about a family member not believing you, there are always options of telling a teacher or a church leader or a professional therapist if that is available to you. In many other cases, telling a parent, a sibling, a spouse, a family member who you are close to is a really good source for a lot of people to go. I would say generally, if you are young, that confiding in someone who has maybe a little more maturity than a peer is often a better way to go, especially if that peer is someone who knows your abuser, like mine was. Other types of people to avoid opening up to, maybe anyone who has said victim blaming comments in the past, maybe about somebody else, people who often say demeaning or derogatory comments towards women or victims in general, or anyone that you know for sure has an active addiction to pornography. As I mentioned in my victim blaming video, much of mainstream pornography these days normalizes and glamorizes rape culture and oftentimes warps the viewer's opinion of rape to be something that is desirable. Having been on the receiving end of comments such as, "Wow, how lucky are you that you were raped?" I can tell you that confiding in someone whose views on rape have been affected by the pornography industry is definitely not a great place to start. So if that's something you know about somebody, maybe just avoid that for the time being. And again, that doesn't make any of these people horrible people. It just might not mean that they're safe to trust with your story, at least not initially. Now, I wish I could give you the best advice on who to talk to and the best advice on everything to say, and that every one of these conversations would turn out completely perfectly, and that everyone would believe you, and everything would be perfect. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. And if by chance you tell someone who does not respond well, who does not believe you, who wants to silence you, or who blames you for what happened, I am so sorry. I definitely know how that feels, and I know how devastating it is. Please don't give up. I promise you, there are people in your life right now who will believe you, who will support you, and who will love you and not see you any differently for having told them this. They're not going to treat you like you're broken and damaged and weak, but they will see you as strong and brave for being able to trust them with this information. There are people like that out there. Please don't give up if you've had a bad experience sharing your story. Please don't let the opinions of others make you doubt yourself or your story. Their reaction is about them. It's not about you. They don't understand. Not many people do. And although most people know not to victim blame, that is still something our society is working against. And if someone chooses to do that, it is always about them and their issues. It's not about you. Remember that this is not your fault. And the shame of this is not yours to carry. You have nothing to be ashamed of because you did not ask for this to happen to you. Even if you made mistakes, it does not make this your fault. I promise you, you are not to blame. And others in your life will see that and will help you walk this path. If you are a support person who has been trusted with somebody else's story, please know that you don't have to know every perfect thing to say in order to help your loved one. I know it might feel like a heavy burden and a lot of pressure, but just know that the things this victim needs from you the most are very simple. They need your love, they need you to believe them, and they need your support. If you can do that, you are a safe person, and being those three things for them will do more to help them than you can possibly know. Tell them you believe them, tell them you love them, and you don't see them as broken or as lesser than for having gone through this. Thank them for being brave enough to tell you their story. It's a very scary thing to share. Cry with them, be with them, love and support them, and let them know that you will get through this together. That's all they really need. Pretty simple, right? You can do this. Please don't pry into the details if they're not ready to share, and don't be judgmental if they do tell you the details. Know that the abuse is not their fault. Also, if you are a parent, know that the abuse is not your fault. There is nothing that either of you could have done to prevent this because you didn't know it was going to happen. Don't blame the victim and don't blame yourself. If you can be there to lift and support one another, you will make it through this. I promise you. And remember that I am always here if you have any questions. Guys, thank you so much for watching this week. Don't forget to subscribe, as well as comment, like, and share this video. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to send me a message or comment below, and I will do my best to get back to you. If there are topics you would like to see videos on in the future, please also let me know in the comments below. I will see you all again next Friday for our Shine video. Thanks for watching. Love you guys.